My name is Mara Ellington. I am 29 years old, and this is my true story. This really happened to me, and it completely changed my life. I once trusted someone deeply, but what they did to me was so shocking, so terrifying that I'm still haunted by it. Today I want you to know how betrayal can come from the people you love the most. What started as something small soon turned into a nightmare I never imagined. If you really want to know how it all happened, then stay with me till the very end, because my story will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And remember, this story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries. My story begins 3 years ago when I was working long hours as a nurse at the local hospital and barely had time for my own life, let alone for my younger sister's 2 little kids, who had recently been placed in my care after she and her husband died in a tragic car accident. I was suddenly responsible for 2 children who were not only grieving, but also in desperate need of stability, love, and protection. The responsibility weighed heavily on me, but I was determined not to let them feel abandoned. That's when I realized I couldn't do it all alone. I needed help, someone reliable who could take care of the children while I was at work, someone who would be there when I couldn't be. That's when I met Sylvia, a woman who came highly recommended by an agency as a professional nanny and housekeeper. She was in her mid-40s with kind eyes, a warm smile, and a soft voice that instantly put the children at ease. From the moment she stepped into my home, she seemed like the answer to my prayers. She cooked, she cleaned, she played with the children, and most importantly, she listened to them when I couldn't. For the first time since the accident, I felt like I could breathe. But slowly little cracks began to show in the perfect picture Sylvia painted. At first it was small things. The children would mention how she told them not to bother me with their silly problems, or I'd notice her locking certain rooms for no reason. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was overthinking. After all, I was stressed, grieving, and exhausted. But then I noticed something stranger. Sylvia was becoming more attached to the kids than to her job. She began calling them my babies, correcting me in front of them when I gave instructions, and even insisting that they should come to her if they needed comfort at night. Not me. I thought maybe it was just part of her being affectionate until the night I came home early from work and found her sitting in the children's room in the dark, whispering to them about how their real mother had chosen her to protect them. I froze in the doorway, listening, my heart pounding as she stroked their hair and promised them that she would never let me take them away from her. The kids looked scared, but they were too confused and young to fully understand. When I turned on the light and confronted her, Sylvia just smiled, acting as if it was nothing unusual, saying I misunderstood. But the look in her eyes was cold, calculating, and it sent a chill down my spine. From that moment on, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't there to help, she was there to replace me. I started digging into her past, calling the agency, asking questions, but they insisted she had glowing reviews and no history of complaints. Still, I couldn't ignore what I was seeing with my own eyes. Things started escalating quickly. The kids would wake up crying, saying Sylvia had told them not to trust me, that I might send them away. I began noticing items in my house being moved, important documents missing, and once when I went into the basement, I found a box hidden behind old furniture. Inside were drawings the kids had made, family pictures, even a locket of mine I thought I'd lost months ago. It was like she was collecting pieces of our lives and keeping them for herself. The final straw came one evening when I returned home earlier than expected and found Sylvia in the kitchen, her back turned, whispering fiercely into the phone. She didn't hear me come in, and I caught enough of the conversation to make my blood run cold. She was telling someone that she wouldn't let Mara ruin everything, and that soon the kids will understand who their real mother figure is. When I confronted her, she hung up instantly, her face shifting into that same fake warm smile, as if nothing had happened, but I saw the flash of anger beneath it. I wanted to fire her right then, but fear kept me frozen. The children were attached to her, the agency trusted her, and I was terrified of what she might do if I tried to remove her abruptly. But in my gut, I knew Sylvia wasn't here to help me. She was here to take everything from me, to steal my family and my place in the children's lives. And then one night something happened that proved I was right all along. I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway, far too close to my bedroom door, and when I opened it, I saw Sylvia standing there in the darkness, holding one of the children's stuffed animals, her face completely blank, her eyes staring at me as though she'd been caught in the middle of something she couldn't explain. She didn't say a word, just turned and walked silently back toward the children's room, closing the door behind her. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a woman with attachment issues. This was something darker, something dangerous. I knew then that I was trapped in my own house with someone who wanted to take over my life, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go to make. It happened from the moment I caught Sylvia outside my bedroom door that night. I couldn't sleep without fear creeping into my chest like poison, and every creak of the house made me wonder if she was moving silently through the dark halls again. Plotting, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike, but I forced myself to keep calm because if I panicked, I knew the children would sense it and it would make them even more vulnerable to her manipulations, and that was exactly what Sylvia wanted: control over them, control over me, control over the home itself. So I started keeping a diary of everything she did, every strange word, every odd action, every misplaced item, and when I went back through my notes, I realized just how fast her influence had grown in only a few weeks. The kids who once clung to me when I came home from work now hesitated before hugging me as if unsure if they were allowed to, and when I asked them what was wrong, they would look nervously toward Sylvia, who always lingered close, listening, smiling in that way that wasn't really a smile but a warning, as if daring me to push them away from her. I even started noticing that she would whisper to them when she thought I couldn't hear, and sometimes I'd catch fragments, "Don't tell Mara," or "Remember what I said about secrets," words that made my blood run cold, because she was weaving herself into their minds, making me out to be the outsider in my own house, and still no one believe me, not the agency, not even a coworker I confided in. They all said I was stressed and imagining things, that maybe Sylvia was just overly caring, but I knew better. I knew what I saw, and the fear inside me kept building until one night it reached a breaking point. I had come home late after a double shift, exhausted and desperate for sleep, when I noticed the children's bedroom light was still on, so I pushed the door open quietly, expecting to find them asleep. But what I saw made my stomach twist. Sylvia was kneeling on the floor with the children sitting cross-legged in front of her, and she was holding one of my sister's old photographs, the one I kept hidden in a drawer because it was the last family picture we had before the accident, and she was showing it to them, telling them that their real mother had spoken to her in dreams, choosing her as the one who should raise them, and she promised them that Mara is too busy, too broken to love you properly, but I will never leave you. And the children were staring at her with wide eyes, too young to understand the cruelty of her words, but scared enough to believe them. I stepped in and snatched the photograph from her hands, my voice shaking with fury as I told her to get out of the room, but she just looked at me calm and smug, as if she knew something I didn't, and she whispered, "They'll see the truth soon, Mara, you can't stop it," before leaving the room so slowly, so deliberately. It was like she wanted me to know she wasn't afraid of me at all. After that night, I began locking my bedroom door, and I even considered calling the police, but what could I say? That my nanny was trying to brainwash my kids into believing she was their chosen mother? Without proof, they dismissed me, maybe even accused me of paranoia, so I had no choice but to gather evidence myself, and that's when I set up a small camera in the children's room, hidden inside a stuffed animal, praying it would catch something, and what it captured over the next week made me sick to my core. Sylvia would creep into their room at night, sitting beside their beds, stroking their hair, whispering in their ears that I was dangerous, that I didn't want them, that if they ever had to choose, they should choose her, and one night she even told them that if I tried to take her away, they should scream and fight because I was not really their family, not anymore. Watching those recordings broke something inside me because I realized she was systematically dismantling everything I had left, trying to erase my sister's memory, trying to erase me, but I also realized something else. She was obsessed, an obsession that deep doesn't end with whispers, it ends with action, and I couldn't wait for her to make her next move. I had to get ahead of her, protect the children before she decided to do something irreversible. So I pretended to go along with her, to smile at her, to thank her for her hard work, even though every word burned my throat, because I knew the only way to beat her was to let her believe I was blind. And while I played the role of the grateful employer, I hid copies of the footage I recorded, kept them at work, emailed them to myself, and made sure there was always a trail of proof, because if she ever tried to turn people against me, I'd have the evidence. But what I didn't realize was that Sylvia was already planning something far worse than I imagined, because a few nights later, after the kids had gone to bed, I walked into the kitchen to find her standing there in the dark, holding a knife, not pointing it at me, not threatening, but just holding it, staring at it like she was lost in thought. And when she noticed me, she smiled that same unnerving smile and placed it back in the drawer, slowly saying, "I was just cleaning," before walking past me as if nothing had happened. But my body shook with dread because I knew she wasn't cleaning. She was testing me, testing how much fear she could instill, testing how far she could push before I broke, and that was the night I realized she was capable of anything, even violence, and if I didn't act soon, she was going to destroy my life or worse, take it. After that night in the kitchen, I couldn't stop picturing Sylvia's face in the shadows, the way she stroked the knife as if she were imagining how it would feel pressed against my skin, and though I tried to keep my composure in front of the children inside, I was crumbling, every breath tight, with fear, every sound in the house like a warning that she was near, waiting, watching, always one step ahead, but I refused to let her know how badly she was breaking me, so I played along with her little charade, even thanked her when she cooked meals, even smiled when she tucked the children in, even though I knew those same moments were when she whispered her poison into their ears. And the worst part was, I could see it working because the kids started pulling away from me more and more, flinching when I raised my voice, doubting my words when I tried to reassure them, and once when I told them we'd go on a family trip together, little Emma whispered, "Sylvia said you might leave us behind," and the ache in my chest was so sharp I almost cried, but I couldn't show weakness, not in front of them, not when Sylvia was weaving her web so tight around us that escape seemed impossible, and yet I was determined to fight her no matter how deep she dug her claws into my life. The hidden camera footage gave me strength, proof that I wasn't insane, but I needed more than recordings. I needed a plan, something that would rip away her mask and expose her for what she really was, so I began staying up late pretending to sleep but listening to her movements, and one night, I heard her leave her room at 2 a.m. and creep toward the children's bedroom, and though my heart thundered in my chest, I forced myself to stay quiet and follow her, padding silently down the hallway until I reached the slightly ajar door, and there she was sitting on Emma's bed, stroking her hair, whispering, "She doesn't love you the way I do, she doesn't understand you, but I'll always be here even if Mara disappears." And I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from storming in, because if I did, she'd just twist it again, make it seem like I was the one who was unstable, so instead I recorded her with my phone from the crack in the doorway, catching every word, and I told myself that soon, very soon, I'd use all of it against her, but what I didn't realize was that Sylvia was already preparing her endgame, and it began the night I woke to find my bedroom door unlocked, even though I knew I had locked it before bed, and when I checked the lock, I noticed faint scratches around the keyhole like someone had been trying to pick it. And dread filled my stomach because I knew she had been inside watching me as I slept, and the thought made me feel violated in a way I'd never felt before, like she had crawled into my most vulnerable space and claimed it as her own. After that, I barely slept at all, jumping at every sound, clutching a heavy lamp beside my bed like a weapon, and still I tried to act normal, but the cracks were showing the exhaustion pulling me apart, and Sylvia saw it. Oh, she saw it, and she thrived on it, smiling wider, moving closer to me when I walked past her, brushing my arm as if she owed me, whispering, "You look tired, Mara, maybe you're not cut out for this." And each time she said something like that, it felt less like a taunt and more like a prophecy, as if she knew she was winning. Then came the night. I'll never forget the night she made her boldest move. Yet, I was in the kitchen cleaning up when I heard a scream from upstairs, high-pitched and terrified, and I dropped everything and ran, only to find Emma crying on the floor with Sylvia beside her, comforting her. But when I asked what happened, Sylvia looked me dead in the eyes and said, "She said you tried to hurt her, Mara," and the words nearly knocked me to the ground because Emma, through sobs, whispered, "You scared me, Aunt Mara," and I realized in that moment that Sylvia had succeeded in planting the ultimate seed, that I was dangerous, that I wasn't safe, that I wasn't who they could trust, and it shattered me but also ignited something inside me, a rage that burned through the fear, because I knew then that if I didn't take her down soon, she'd take the children from me forever, not by law, not by force, but by twisting their love until they no longer wanted me at all. So I pretended to comfort Emma, pretended to thank Sylvia for being there, but the entire time I was plotting, because I knew I couldn't just expose her, had to trap her, force her to reveal the monster she truly was. And the opportunity came a few nights later when I told Sylvia I'd be working a late shift, even though I never planned to leave the house, and instead I hid in the attic crawl space with my phone camera ready, listening as Sylvia moved through the house freely, her footsteps confident, her voice dripping with manipulation, as she sat the children down in the living room and told them, "Tonight we'll play a game, a secret game where we pretend Mara doesn't live here anymore, because soon she won't." And my blood ran cold as I realized she was preparing them for my removal, conditioning them for a future where she was their only caregiver, their only mother figure. And then she said something that made my skin crawl. "Sometimes bad things happen to people who don't belong, and when they do, we don't cry, we just move on, okay?" And though the kids nodded uncertainly, I could see their confusion, their fear, and that was when I knew I had enough, more than enough, to take her down. But before I could even step out and confront her, she suddenly froze, looking up at the ceiling as if she sensed me there, and her eyes narrowed, lips curling into a slow, knowing smile as she whispered, "Mara thinks she's clever, doesn't she?" And my heart stopped because she knew, somehow she knew, I was there listening, recording, and in that moment I realized the battle wasn't over, it was just beginning, and the worst was yet to come. The moment Sylvia's eyes locked onto the ceiling that night, the crawl space felt like a coffin closing in around me, my breath shallow, my pulse hammering so loudly I was sure she could hear it. And when she whispered that chilling line, "Mara thinks she's clever, doesn't she?" I realized she had been waiting for this, maybe even orchestrating it, pushing me to the edge until I made a move she could anticipate. And though terror threatened to paralyze me, I reminded myself of the phone clenched in my hand, the hours of recordings, saved proof of her manipulation, her madness, and that gave me the strength to stay hidden until she finally tucked the children into bed and retreated to her room, humming softly to herself like a predator who had already caught its prey. And only then did I dare crawl out, my body stiff, my throat dry, but my mind burning with resolve, because I knew the time for watching and waiting was over. I needed to end this war once and for all. The next morning I acted normal, brewing coffee, packing lunches, even thanking Sylvia for her. And she smiled sweetly, those dead eyes glittering with the arrogance of someone who believed she had already won. But little did she know, I had spent the night transferring every piece of evidence onto a hard drive, sending backups to a trusted friend out of state, making sure that no matter what happened to me, her mask would eventually be ripped off for the world to see. And while she thought she was controlling me, I was laying my own trap. That evening I invited her to join me in the basement to sort through some old boxes, pretending to be conciliatory, pretending that her poisonous whispers hadn't destroyed me, and she followed smug as ever, her shadow falling long across the concrete as she descended the stairs. But what she didn't know was that I had set up 2 hidden cameras down there, both live streaming to my friend, both recording every sound, every move. And as soon as she reached the bottom, I closed the basement door behind us and faced her, finally dropping the mask I had worn for weeks, and I said, "I know what you've been doing, Sylvia, and tonight it ends." And instead of fear, instead of denial, she laughed, that sharp, jagged laugh that made my blood turn to ice, and she said, "Oh, Mara, you've always been so dramatic, but the children love me more than they love you now, don't you see? You've already lost." And when I demanded to know why she had tried to steal them, why she had twisted their hearts against me, her smile only widened as she whispered, "Because you don't deserve them, because I was meant to be here, because this is my family now, not yours." And before I could react, she lunged at me, knife flashing in her hand as though it had been hidden in her pocket the whole time, and we struggled, crashing into boxes, the blade grazing my arm as I fought to wrench it from her grip, her strength fueled by obsession, mine by pure survival. And for a terrifying moment, I thought she'd overpower me, thought this basement would become my grave. But adrenaline surged, and I slammed her against the concrete wall, the knife clattering to the floor, and with shaking hands, I pressed the lamp cord I had hidden earlier around her wrists, tying them as tightly as I could while she screamed, cursed, spit every vile word she could muster, calling me weak, calling me pathetic, vowing that the children would never forgive me. And I let her rant because the cameras were capturing everything. The confession, the attack, the madness, unfiltered and undeniable. And when I finally dragged her upstairs and locked her in the pantry until the police arrived, she was still laughing, still certain she'd win somehow. But when the officers watched the footage, when they heard her whispers about bad things happening and this being her family, their faces hardened, their hands gripped her arms tighter, and for the first time I saw fear flicker in Sylvia's eyes as they dragged her away. The children, though confused and shaken, clung to me that night, and Emma whispered, "We didn't know. Aunt Mara, we didn't understand." And the tears I had been holding back for so long finally came, but they weren't just tears of grief. They were tears of victory, of relief, of knowing that I had beaten the monster in my home before she could completely devour us. And yet, even as the house grew quiet, even as Sylvia's presence was erased from our lives, I couldn't shake the echo of her final words, the venom in her voice when she hissed, "This isn't over," because deep down I knew people like her never truly let go their poison, lingering long after their bodies are locked away. And though I had won this battle, I would forever wonder if somewhere in some dark corner of a prison cell she was still smiling, still planning, still dreaming of the family she believed was rightfully hers, and that thought would haunt me for the rest of my life.